What happens when everything you thought you knew about your life suddenly changes? When your career, your identity, and path are interrupted by trauma, loss, or life-altering diagnosis. This week on Eagles Don't Quack, we explore a powerful conversation about resilience, reinvention, and finding purpose when life demands you start over. Melissa Grosboll's journey epitomizes the human spirit's ability to adapt and thrive. From a 2-decade chiropractic career, then facing trauma, loss, and a breast cancer diagnosis, Melissa's story isn't just survival. It's about discovering that every ending can be a doorway to the unimaginable. Let's chop it up. Melissa Grosboll, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Tony. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be with us. So we're happy.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about.
Thank you so much. So who is Melissa Grosboll?
Who am I? I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a business owner. Actually, I'm not anymore. I'm an employee, but I'm still kind of a business owner on the side, and just a lover of life. As you know, facing your mortality and a cancer diagnosis really makes you sit up and look at your life and appreciate what you have and just be blessed for every day on this earth. One of my favorite mottos is any day above ground is a good day.
My granddad used to say, I'm happy because I'm not taking a dirt nap.
There you go.
So yeah, I definitely appreciate that. So Melissa, where did you grow up? Where are you from? Tell us about your childhood.
I was born in Pennsylvania, rural northeastern Pennsylvania, nice little immigrant coal mining town. I like to joke. Actually, I don't joke because it's true that there were 4 Catholic churches in my town of about 11,000 people.
Yeah.
And it was the Polish Catholic, the Irish Catholic, the Italian Catholic, and the Russian Catholic. So whichever immigrants you were descended from is kind of the Catholic church that you went to. And my whole family's from there. Both my mom and dad were born and raised there. And then my parents always loved the ocean. They loved the beach. And when I was 12 years old, they just picked me up and we moved to Florida. We were kind of, I won't say shunned by our families, but nobody had ever really left before. So it was a big shock for everybody. So I spent my teenage years in Florida. I went to college there. And then my husband and I, boyfriend at the time, but future husband, we moved to Atlanta so I could go to chiropractic school. And we lived in Atlanta for 5 years. And then we moved out here to Colorado, and we've been out here almost 28 years now. Holy cow.
Wow. So let's rewind a little bit. So you said your parents picked you up and moved. So am I taking that you're an only child?
So I had an older sister, but she was 18 and she was no longer living with us. She was off on her own. And so it was just the 3 of us that moved to Florida. She stayed in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Growing up, did you have any aspirations of what you wanted to be, or did you always know you wanted to be a doctor?
So I don't remember when I was little, but I do remember, and for those people in your audience that are old enough, one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid was Quincy, MD, a story about a medical examiner / detective. I was probably about 8 years old, and I said that I wanted to be Quincy when I grew up. And so from the time I was 8, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. It was just the type of doctor that I wanted to be changed. And I used to say that I wanted to be a medical examiner because that way, if I was doing surgery and I messed up, it wouldn't matter because they were already dead.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. So what happened with that?
That's an 8-year-old.
Yeah. So did that actually come true?
It did not.
Okay.
No, I changed several times. There was a period I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. Actually, I think my mom wanted me to be a plastic surgeon so I could just take care of her. And then when I got into college, I went into pre-med, not really knowing what kind of doctor I wanted to be. And that was right around the time when I think it was the Learning Channel had come out with those surgery shows where they would show surgeries taking place. And I was really excited because like, oh, wow, I can see what I'm going to be doing. And I quickly realized that I really just have a massive aversion to bodily fluids.
Mhm.
And, I did cadaver lab in school and I actually loved that. It was one of my favorite classes. I really enjoy learning about the human body. But, there aren't any fluids once they're embalmed and they're dead. And so I kind of figured that actual medicine probably wasn't for me if I
Yeah.
couldn't handle bodily fluids.
Yeah.
So I switched to PT and I was on the PT path. And then I was chatting with my chiropractor one day. I've been seeing a chiropractor since I was 12 years old. And he asked me, have you ever thought about chiropractic? And I really hadn't. And I looked into it and I looked at chiropractic and I looked at PT, and the decision came down to, I don't want to work for somebody else for the rest of my life. I want to be my own boss.
Yeah.
And so I picked chiropractic because at the time, how old I am, PTs, physical therapists worked for doctors. They didn't have those wellness PT clinics and stuff that you could go without a medical referral. And I didn't want to be beholden to other people for what I did for the rest of my life. So I decided to become a chiropractor so I could be my own boss.
Well, there's something special about a person that wants to go to medical school anyway. I look at certain fields and careers that people choose. I call it angel work. It takes a special person that's connected to humanity in a way that they want to help. And it seems like as a young person, you had that in you and it kind of manifested, when it had the chance to manifest. So we definitely thank you for choosing that career path. My chiropractor was the one who saved my life.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yes. I thought I had a back injury or something was going on. Couldn't quite figure it out. And she was just very persistent with saying that I wasn't getting any better through my adjustments and the things we were doing. And she recommended me to go see my internal specialist. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would be here, And so unlikely place that would come from your chiropractor, but it did. And so I'm thankful for you and all other chiropractors. So, so you went to college here. You said you went to school in Florida. Where did you go to college at?
So I spent the first 3 years at the University of Miami. And then when I decided to switch over to a different path, I moved and finished up at the University of South Florida in Tampa. So that's where I got my degree. But I say that I'm a Miami alum, even though I didn't graduate there, because that's University of South Florida. I didn't live on campus. It was a commuter school, and it was just, I go to school, I go to work. It didn't have the same college experience as Miami did.
So when you finished medical school, what was next for you? What happened? Did you start your own practice, or what was that next step for Melissa?
So when I finished chiropractic school, I graduated in 97. We moved out to Colorado like 2 months after I graduated, and we had looked at California. I actually went and I got my chiropractic license in California, and then things just didn't come together. We couldn't find a place to live. It just really wasn't coming together the way that it should if it was meant to be. And so we came in, we visited some people out here in Colorado that I went to school with and just fell in love. And we basically went home and packed up our bags and we moved out to Colorado a month later. Unbeknownst to me at the time, it turned out I was actually pregnant with my daughter at that time too. So when we moved out here, I just worked temp work. I had to wait. Like we moved out here in February and I had to wait until it was almost September before I got licensed here. And then my daughter was born in October. So I stayed home with her for almost a year. I had the opportunity to be able to do that. And then when it was finally time, when she was old enough that she could walk and she could talk and she wasn't going to just be stuffed in a corner at daycare somewhere, I started my own practice, but I worked in an office with 2 other chiropractors so I could kind of learn the ropes and use their front desk staff and learn about things. And I stayed there for about a year and then I opened up my own practice after the first year. It was a little too much estrogen in the office. There were probably between the massage therapist and the front desk staff and the two women chiropractors. I'm a woman. I totally get it, but there was just a little too much estrogen in that office, and I wanted to be out on my own.
Well, this is a good segue because, we have a very diverse listening audience, and chiropractic care is probably one thing I can say is misunderstood. A lot of people don't understand it. They definitely don't go to one, right? And they don't understand the necessity of it or the importance of it. So for some of our rural listeners in some of the smaller towns, can you kind of help us understand, number one, what chiropractic care is, being a chiropractic doctor, and also the importance of it and how it can help you in your maintenance?
So chiropractic, most people, when they hear about a chiropractor, they think about cracking backs and cracking necks. They've heard the horror stories that are not nearly as prevalent as it actually sounds when you hear people talk about it. But chiropractors basically work with the spine and the nervous system. And so the nervous system is everything to life. You cannot survive. You cannot do anything without the nerves coming from your brain and your spinal cord. Now that spinal cord and brain are housed within our skull and our spine, our vertebrae. And so the vertebrae are the protectors of the spinal canal and the spinal cord and all of the nerves. And when we are just living life and moving, there are times when we can have misalignments of those vertebrae in our back. And when those vertebrae misalign or get stuck or just aren't functioning properly, it can put pressure on the nerves that are coming out of the spine. And so if the nerve that's coming out of the spine because the spine is misaligned, that nerve isn't going to function properly because it's going to be like, stepping on a garden hose. You're going to have a little kink. And so wherever that nerve goes is not going to be functioning optimally. So yes, chiropractors, they crack backs and they crack necks. But what we're really doing is we are optimizing the nervous system by removing any interference to the nerves that are coming out of the spine and wherever they go. And so I practice based on, you get your teeth checked every 6 months. You go and get, your physical or whatever once a year. Like chiropractic is the same thing. You want to get your spine checked. My thing was ideally every 3 to 4 weeks, just to make sure that everything is functioning properly. And then, you slip off of a curb or you sleep funny or, you move wrong or something like that. Different, just being human, you're going to have those little misalignments that just need to be put back into place every once in a while. Yeah. And and then if you have a problem, like you throw your back out or, you have torticollis in your neck or something, chiropractic can really help to get you back to your optimum health.
And I like that point that you made about, people go to the dentist and you do some of these other things for maintenance, because it's proven that if you don't take care of your teeth and bacteria can develop and that gets into your blood, it can cause other things. So we're talking about the nerves and the nerve being compressed, right? And compression in your spine. Can that sometimes lead to other type of symptoms, mimic other type of symptoms, when in actuality it could have just been that? A compressed
absolutely.
nerve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially one of the biggest things is, people they'll say that they have carpal tunnel syndrome, and there are very often times that the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome can actually be coming from the nerves in your neck, because the nerves in your lower neck go all the way down your arm and into your hand. And so I like to say, just check with a chiropractor first before you go into having surgery or something else like that you might not necessarily need. And going back to what you said about, just getting checked, is we tend to think of health as being the absence of symptoms. But most oftentimes once symptoms appear, you're already down the disease or the illness process.
Yeah.
Getting things checked and optimized before you have symptoms, because as we all know, cancer can fester in your body for years and you don't know it because you don't have any symptoms.
That's right.
But does that mean you're healthy? You've got cancer growing in your body. So no, you're not optimally healthy, but you don't have any symptoms. That those two are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah, you're speaking truth to power. My doctor told me that I probably had this stage 4 for a long time and didn't even know it because I didn't show any symptoms until it was too late. And by then I was already stage 4. And so what you're saying definitely is true. And I like how your face lit up when you start talking about your work. I can tell that you're very passionate about it.
Just because I'm retired, I still have a passion for chiropractic. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's, I get adjusted every 2 weeks. And I have, my whole adult life ever since I went into chiropractic school, and I will until the day I die.
So we're talking to Dr. Melissa Grosboll, Reinvention, Healing and Strength After Cancer. So Melissa, you practiced for a good while. And can you tell us about the point that you got to where you start feeling a little burnt out from this? I know we had prior conversations that it kind of affected you doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, I practiced for almost 20 years and I loved it, and I still love it. When my daughter was getting ready to graduate from high school, I kind of went through this just identity crisis. Like I was always a mom first and a professional second. She was our only, I love her, like, of course, so much, but I always wanted to make sure that I was home after school when she got home, or picked her up from school, went to all of her things. So I was always a mom first. And when she was getting ready to graduate high school, she wanted to go on a gap year program and go to the other side of the world for a year. And so I just went through this kind of identity crisis. Like nothing really lit me up. Nothing really made sense for me anymore. I was trying to figure out who I was without being a full-time mom. And chiropractic was kind of part of that. And I had just kind of lost my passion for it. But I went through school for 8 years and I had all of these student loans, and it's not something that I can just say, I don't want to do this anymore. Right. I really felt obligated because of all of that, but I just didn't have the passion for it anymore. I kind of got a little tired of caring more about people's health than they did.
Yes.
It was a struggle because they didn't want to do the things that I wanted them to do outside of coming in for their adjustments. And then they would blame me when they weren't getting better. And it just got to a point where, like, I need to do something different because this just wasn't filling my cup anymore the way that it had in the past. I was just kind of done.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I owned my company for 20 some years. And I think sometimes we neglect to pay attention to the mental fatigue that we develop. And like you, I felt like, here I am. At the time I had like 200 employees, and I just felt like I was giving more than what I was getting back. Right. I'm providing opportunities and having the weight of families depending on you to make sure your company is in place. I have people work for me 15, 18, 20 years, and I think cancer in a way, readjusted me. It saved me because it forced me to realize, like, you're doing all of this, but at the end of the day, you're not really taking care of yourself. The stress and the running around and the contracts and this and that and this. And you, in your mind, you're doing something good, but I was tearing up my body in the process. No vacation, working 80 to 100 hours whenever I felt like I was working, because you never stop.
Right.
And so being a business owner, these things. I'm wondering.
And being a chiropractor or seeing a chiropractor, It's a very physical job.
It is.
And it's a lot of work, and the busier you get, the more people you're adjusting. And, if your heart just isn't in it, then you get more tired because you're working so hard physically and mentally. And my body was getting tired. My brain was getting tired. So it was just time to be done.
It was time to be done. So when you recognized that, what did you do? What did you do about it?
So I have always loved baking. I have always had a sweet tooth. I think I'm a bit of a sugar addict, actually. And during this time after my daughter graduated and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I saw this video on Facebook of this edible cookie dough shop that had just opened in New York City. I watched that video probably a dozen times and I said, oh my gosh, and I think I've posted the video on my Facebook wall, and my comment was, please come to Colorado and take all of my money. I did say that. And I really looked at it and I looked at different things and I thought, wow, this would be so fun. Like, I love cookie dough. I grew up on cookie dough. Who cares if you're not supposed to eat it? We all ate it anyway and loved it, and it was delicious. And so I started like online sales and going to farmers markets and craft shows and things like that and selling this edible cookie dough. Mm-hmm. And I even had a refrigerator in my chiropractic office and I had it stocked. And so here I am, talking to my patients about health and wellness and, hey, do you want to buy some cookie dough on your way out the door?
Bad doctor, bad doctor.
And I did that for about 2 years until what I thought was the perfect location for a retail shop opened up in my town. It's not really a small town. There's about 55,000 people in my town, but we have one of these old time downtowns that's just, 2 lanes and a big gazebo and a park and all of these little cutesy little shops and stuff that's been here for 100 years. And I wanted to be downtown. Mm-hmm. And a location came up and I said, this is what I want to do. And my husband and I had long talks about it. I had never had a retail shop before. And it was a big learning curve. But at that point, I finally said, I can't do both. So I finally retired from chiropractic practice and opened up an edible cookie dough scoop shop in my little downtown.
Wow. I know people thought you were crazy.
People thought I was crazy, and then they tasted my cookie dough and they thought, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. Although my mother never understood it. My mother was from the generation that did not eat cookie dough, and she was supportive of me, but she just never really understood why I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. But everybody else thought it was a brilliant idea and loved it. And, I had great support and great friends who supported me through the business. And it was so much fun. The smiles on people's faces.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. How long did you have your shop?
So the shop was open for 3 years. Not long after we opened was when COVID hit, and COVID hit us pretty hard. And we pivoted a lot. We started selling things that people could take home. And we started doing like cookie decorating kits. So sugar cookies with frosting and sprinkles and things like that for different holidays and events and stuff. So we kept going during COVID. We were on all the DoorDash and all of those delivery platforms. Mm-hmm. We started selling on Etsy. So holidays were fantastic for us, selling and shipping stuff on Etsy. But the last year, it just got really hard. Like, we never fully recovered from COVID. And again, I was just getting tired and I was, under stress all the time. I wasn't really taking care of myself. I say, like, I lived in a sugar factory and I ate the profits.
Yeah.
Because I was working, 80, 90 hours a week, trying to run this business, dealing with staff, like you said. And I employed teenagers, so it wasn't like their whole families depended on their income and stuff, but it was still making payroll every 2 weeks, continually out there trying to get new business in and stuff. And it's very hard running a business.
It is. How did that make you feel, Melissa, when you let the sugar factory go?
It was really hard at first. I felt like a failure. I felt like I had failed, like I couldn't keep it going. Other businesses were able to make it through. My husband and I had long talks about it. And I did a lot of praying and meditating. And is this the right thing to do? And, when is the right time to just let go when something isn't working? And we just weren't profitable anymore. But it really felt like a failure. And I had kind of a hard time getting through it at first. My husband told me that I needed to take a sabbatical because I had been working full-time for over 20 years without ever taking a break.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want you to take at least 6 months off because I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I didn't want to go back to chiropractic and I had no idea what my next chapter was going to be. And so I won't say he made me, but he strongly encouraged me to just take 6 months and heal and rest and just figure out what the next chapter is in my life.
I'm glad you had him there for that. I didn't get a chance to do that, right? I got, like your business was in the throes of COVID, and that's when I got sick. And so a lot of companies were pulling back. We were losing contracts and that's normal for a business, but I couldn't be in a position to seek smaller contracts or bid on smaller type projects because I was fighting for my life with cancer. I didn't get a chance to grieve. Here I am fighting for my life. They're telling me I might not make it and having to close. I remember I wrote the last check for my business before I shut down my office. And I remember I was crying and it was uncontrollable because I don't cry like that, but I felt like a failure that I was failing. Here I had this company for all this time and successful. And then now I'm closing the doors and I can't grieve because I'm sitting in the chemo chair while I'm doing all of this, And so that failure, that feeling of failure was heavy. And I understand what you're saying. And even to this day, 4 years later, I haven't had a chance to let up and just grieve. I haven't had a chance to go somewhere. I have to just keep fighting and fighting. And even though people listening to us, cancer may not be what you're experiencing, but sometimes life just hits you like that. You feel like you're fighting and you're scrapping and you're clawing. And so, I understand that. And it's good to have a support system when those type things, start happening. So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about, wellness and health. And so you seem like you're very fit and very active. How did that play a part in you just rediscovering yourself and not having any business responsibilities, but just taking care of Melissa?
Well, not long after I closed the shop was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I had free time, right? I wasn't doing anything and I was over 50. And so I just kind of thought, I should probably go and do all the things, right? I should go have a colonoscopy. I should go to see the dermatologist. I should go and have a mammogram. And I had the time to do all of those things. And so I went, and I did, and I went and got my mammogram. It was the first mammogram I ever had, and it came back positive. And no, there's no cancer in my family. Like this isn't a thing that happens in my family. And I went back and had another mammogram. I had a, diagnostic mammogram, and then I had an ultrasound and a biopsy and all the things. And then I still remember I was walking into my financial planner's office and the phone rang from Sally Job, who is our breast cancer imaging out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, hang on a second, I need to take this, no big deal. Let me just take it and I'll be right in. And that was the call that said, I'm sorry, but you have cancer. And I mean, it just wiped, everything. And then I had to go in there and have a meeting with my financial planner. And, so she was the first one that I told because she was there when it happened. But, it's amazing. And I know, and anybody who's experienced cancer knows, like, your world changes in an instant. Like as soon as you hear those 3 words, it's like nothing else matters at that time. And so I looked back, in all of my time trying to come to terms with all of this. But also in that moment, I no longer felt like a failure for closing my business, because I really felt like God was telling me, okay, you've got this in your path now, and you need to be able to devote 100% to this.
Yes.
And I say, like, I was so busy with my business that it might have been another 5 years before I went and had a mammogram, because I didn't have time for that when I was in business. So
right.
I'm very grateful to closing the shop, because I had the time to go and have all of these tests done and to be able to find that. And they found it very early. It was stage 1.
Mhm.
There was no spread. There was no nothing. I had a lumpectomy. I had a couple treatments of radiation. And, almost 3 years later, like, I just had all of my scans and stuff last month, and everything is still all clear.
Oh,
So
man. That's amazing.
I'm very grateful. And so God makes sure that things happen the way that they're supposed to, so we can serve his will. And I just really feel like it was time to close the shop so I could focus on me. And I really did. I just changed everything in
Mhm.
my life. I ate right, and I did the right kind of exercise, and I prioritized sleep, and I prioritized self-care, and I did what I could for, the environment. The environment was the hardest thing
Mhm.
to try and clean up. I mean, like, we had just finished our basement, and I was like recuperating and recovering from surgery in the basement. And I'm reading this book about how, the toxins in the carpet and the paint and the drywall and all of the things. And I'm like, there's nothing I can do about that. We just had this done. And, so we got a big air purifier to help with all of the toxins and stuff. But, I changed everything, and I went maybe a little too far. The pendulum swung a little too far, because I was so militant about it for almost a year that just wasn't sustainable. But I needed to do that to have control over something. When
Yes.
you're going through cancer, you just feel very much out of control.
Yeah.
And taking care of myself was the one thing that I really could control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people get to choose and others are chosen. And I think we were chosen for a time as this to help someone else. Because when you're going through cancer, you realize really quickly, you're either going to die or you're going to fight. There's no in between. And you have to make that decision right away, which side you want to be on. It can't be in the middle. You have to fortify your mental position and say, I am going to live. And for me, a lot of people I cut off. I didn't say anything initially because I wanted to wrap my head around this. And I used surrogates. I used my sister to eventually start telling people. How was that process for you? I mean, you got it just before, a phone call, but did you tell everybody initially, or did you wait, or how did that work for you?
So I didn't tell people really initially, and I wanted to tell especially my family in person. So we were planning to go to Florida for my niece's 40th birthday. She was doing a big celebration for her birthday. And so when my husband and I went, of course I told my husband, that day, of course. But, I told my niece and her family when we went down there. This was a couple of weeks later. And then that following weekend when we got back, I told my daughter and her boyfriend. And then I just really didn't tell anybody else. I was so overwhelmed with, as a doctor, like, I went into research mode, and they say to stay off of Dr. Google. But I mean, I went into like deep dive, and learning all the things that I could. And I knew if I put it out there, like on social media and stuff, I would get a lot of unsolicited advice. And I said I was having a hard enough time with the solicited advice. That's right. That I really didn't want people trying to tell me what to do or what they would do or whatever. So I waited until after my surgery. I told like our closest friends and the rest of our family, like, both of my parents and my sister, like, everybody's gone. So I didn't have that to worry about. But like our closest friends, I told beforehand, but that was it. And I wanted to recover and go through that healing without a lot of people that I know socially, and that's about it. And then at some point, I can't even remember what it was. I really kind of felt like I needed to share my story because maybe it would help somebody else. Being a doctor, like my whole mission is serving others and helping others. And I wanted to be able to help other people through my experience. And that was when I started sharing. And I did lose some friends over it, but they weren't like good friends. They were Facebook friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of good riddance. I don't need that kind of energy in my life when I'm, in this healing process. So it was all for good. But some of the people that came forward who shared with me their stories and this whole cancer community that I never wanted to join, but I'm so grateful to be a member of, has been just such a blessing to me. And all of the people that I've gotten to know and the experiences I've gotten to have because of this have just made it so completely worthwhile for me.
Well, we wouldn't have met if it wasn't for that either. So
exactly. Right.
So let's talk about your podcast. I love your podcast, The Many Faces of Cancer. And we kind of started talking about it already. How did that come about, and what was your thought process in saying, I'm going to start a podcast?
Well, I initially wanted to write a book. I loved the stories that people were telling me. I just felt so honored that people were willing to share with me their experiences. And I thought that, hey, if I love this so much, other people need to hear these stories too. And I was originally going to write a book. It was going to be like a chicken soup for the soul kind of thing, and actually have people share their own stories that I would just put together and publish. And I spoke with an editor and a publisher and realized just how intensive and expensive it is to write and publish a book, that I kind of stepped back and it's like, well, maybe at some point. And then I went to this women's conference and I was kind of talking about it. And a couple of people said, well, why don't you just do a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially free to start. I can work on building an audience. And then when I finally do get to write the book, then I already have an audience built in, to market the book to. And I'm a much more comfortable talker than I am writer anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I, as you can tell, I love to talk, and I'll talk to anybody about anything pretty much ever. That it just seemed like the perfect fit. And actually, The Many Faces of Cancer, that was the title of the book that my editor came up with. And I said, I'm like, can I steal this? And she said, no, you can have it because it's perfect for you. And then I took a course on how to start a podcast and started reaching out to get, guests on. And I, just like you, I interview somebody every week, and it's somebody who has either had cancer, they're a current patient, a survivor. I've interviewed caregivers. I've interviewed family members, just somebody that's in the cancer community or has been on a cancer journey is who I chat with. And the stories are just like, everybody has a story, and everybody has an incredible story. And I want people to hear these stories and maybe feel a little hopeful or find a little inspiration in these stories. And also want to have a platform where people can actually share their stories and get them out there in the ethos that they might not have an opportunity otherwise to be able to do.
Yeah, sometimes when you hear the cancer diagnosis, you feel like you're alone. And I think podcasts like yours help people realize that you're not alone and that there's always someone there. And I drew inspiration from that, listening to other people's stories and saying, hey, that can be me. I told my doctor, no matter what the percentage is, good or bad, I'm on the good side of that.
Right.
And they told me initially 1 to 3 years, and this is year 4 for me. And I don't know if I told you or not, but I had a second cancer. Did I tell you that?
You said that you had Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, both. And so I'm extremely grateful for my life and thriving and exceeding past that. I wouldn't have that if I, number one, didn't have my faith, and my faith being rooted and grounded because of where I am now dealing with this, and also seeing other people that are thriving and surviving and making it too. Do you sometimes feel survivor's guilt? I know for me, when we have a fallen warrior, I never ask why, but you do have this feeling like, why do they have to be taken so soon, and why didn't they make it? Do you ever go through that?
I think my survivor's guilt was a little different from that. Mine was more because I had a lumpectomy and I had 5 treatments of radiation, and that was it for my cancer treatment. I used to feel like, well, I don't really deserve to be a cancer survivor because I didn't have all of the treatments and my cancer wasn't bad enough.
You didn't have a cancer cred, right? Like street cred.
And like, oh, I don't need to join a support group, and all of these resources and wonderful things that are out there for cancer survivors. Like, oh, well, let somebody else do it who's been through more than I have. That was more of my guilt. I didn't really feel like I could call myself a cancer survivor because mine was so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a lot with that I see a grief counselor, and she's just been phenomenal, helping me through so much over the last 5 years. And she helped me with that. I've had other people help me with that, and one gal that I interviewed, she said to me, do you still think about your cancer coming back? And I said, yes. I said, and the way I look at it is, it's like, I don't have a dark cloud over my head, but the cloud is back here.
Yeah.
And so it's always kind of coming with me. And, I'll have a pain in my hip, or I'll have a really bad headache or something. Yeah. And my first thought is, oh my gosh, has my cancer spread?
Yeah.
And it's just automatic. And she said, then you are a survivor because you deal with the same stuff that the rest of us who have gone through more in the way of treatment have gone through. That it's an emotional thing, not just a physical thing.
You can't unhear the words, you have cancer. That stays with you for the rest of your life. And just like that cloud is following you, it is following all of us. And, I was talking about how I felt about it last week. And I was saying, it's like a sentence when they tell you there's a life expectancy tied to it. It's like getting sentenced by a judge, and you're not going to get out for good behavior. You're on death row, and you're going to die. But in that death, you still have life. And so I look at us as having that cloud, like you eloquently mentioned, but also we can still choose life because nothing is promised anyway. The time that we think we have, we never had. And so live now.
It's a very hard time when doctors give you a set number or, set amount of time that you have, because they have no idea.
That's
and
right.
I have talked to people who have had loved ones that have said, oh yeah, my doctor gave my dad 5 years, and like 5 years and a day later he died.
Yeah.
Because it puts it in your mind. Not
That's
for
right.
everyone. There are people like you who, I'm going to outlive that. I don't care what you say. But there's so many people that goes into their minds, and it's like, okay, that's my death day. No matter what I do about it, that's what's going to happen. And it just drives me crazy because so many people today are outliving that. And I mean, we're all on borrowed time. I could go out and get hit by a car tomorrow. And
that's right.
And that's it. And so, I try and tell people, don't listen to what your doctor says about that, because that's just some arbitrary based on other people. And you are not other people. You are yourself. And, only God knows how long you have on this earth. No doctor does.
No doctor knows. That's right. Melissa, how do you give so much? How do you find your strength? Who pours back into you?
God. Probably first and foremost. Being a doctor, I've had to learn how to do self-care. You can't pour from an empty cup. And for many years I did. And I learned the hard way through illnesses and things that I have to take care of myself and put myself first as much as I can. I mean, obviously you take care of your family and things, but taking care of myself. And so self-care is very important to me. For me, I'm one of those crazy ones that exercise to me is self-care, that I have an hour or so a day where I'm in the gym and I'm running or I'm lifting or I'm doing something that is just for me, and it fills my cup because I know that I'm doing something for my health and for my strength. And, I love to read. I love to do jigsaw puzzles. I love to take hot baths in the, in the winter time, and just doing things to fill my own cup has become part of my daily routine, because I know what happens when I don't do it, and I don't have time to be sick. And after having cancer, I don't want to become a hospitable host for it again.
That's right.
And so I need to take care of myself, and I will be selfish in that way sometimes and prioritize my own self-care over other things because of how important it is to my health.
My doctor said those exact words. He said, Tony, for one time in your life, you are going to have to be the most selfish person. It goes against your nature, but you're going to have to be. It's
and self-care is not selfish. That's
I know, right?
What you need to know. It is not selfish.
Yeah. I think I find solace in playing music and writing songs, and definitely riding my bike when my heart is beating and the wind is blowing and the chain is rattling and the tires are humming. That's like music. And so it just really takes me to a different place. And every pedal stroke, I said, take this cancer,
Love that.
And every mile that I go faster, take that. That's for you. This is for you, and so I kind of make light of it now. You have to embrace what you're going through. You can't run from it. You have to embrace it and say, I'm this immovable object and you're not going to move me, And so that's how I feel about it.
The mountain that the water has to go around.
Yeah, you got to go around me. I'm not moving. If you could give our listeners some advice, someone maybe sick, doesn't have to be with cancer, but if it is cancer, what words can you share with them on how to deal with this and that they can make it through this?
First of all, honestly, have a support system in your life, whether it is family, whether it is friends, whether it is God, whether it is, some kind of Facebook group or Reddit group or whatever there are out there, but just have people in your life that you can lean on, that you can talk to, that you can count on to be there for you. Because as we were saying, people sometimes feel so alone when they're diagnosed or when they have an illness, and there are almost always people around you that want to help you. They want to be there for you. And so many of us, especially moms, I don't know about other people out in the audience, but especially moms, we don't know how to ask for help. We're designed to be the be all end all for everybody except ourselves. And I've had so many people what can I do? How can I help? And that's kind of a loaded question, because when you're going through something, the last thing you want to do is think about how somebody else can help you.
That's right.
But even knowing that there are people out there who want to help, come up with a list of things that you need done. You need somebody to walk your dog. You need somebody to go to the grocery store for you. Those kinds of things that there are people out there that want to do that. So lean on that and let other people help you and be there to support you when you're going through this.
That's good advice. I think when you said that there are people there that want to help you, but it will also weed out the pretenders. When you give them this list of things you need help with, they will scatter. And so it's a twofold. You will find out who's really there for you and the ones that was just really talking. And
somebody needs to write a book. About how you can help people when they're going through an illness or a disease, instead of just saying, if there's anything I can do, please let me know, because you'll never hear from them again.
And how about being a good human? Right? I tell people all the time, are you a good person? Because instinctively, these things will come out of you. We have a strong faith in God, and we know that's the essence of this, right? The Bible say the greatest of these is charity, is love. And then it also says, if you do these to the least of them, you do it to me, right? There's a lot of principles that speak about helping and loving one another. Just do that. Be a good person. Don't say it as a cliche, because I might really need what you're saying you would do. And then when I ask you and you don't do it, then what happens? You know,
my thing was, when people would ask me, I would say, go for a walk with me. I made sure that I went for a walk every day. I got out in nature, because nature is healing. And it's like, is there anything that I can do for you? What do you need? Like, come over and go for a walk with me. And then we got to talk, and we got to be outside and in nature and just in community. And that was what I needed. You know, my husband is a great cook. I didn't need meals.
mm-hmm.
My dog had passed. I didn't need somebody to walk my dog or do my laundry. Like, I didn't go through chemo, so I wasn't in that bad of shape going through treatment. But like, I need people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Come and go for a walk with me. And so many people did. I had some of the best conversations of my life with people just taking a walk out on the trail.
Mm-hmm. I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. Melissa, you want to do a rapid fire?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. All right. Number one word for your healing journey.
Transformative.
And why you say that?
Because going through this process and going through the healing process just transformed me physically, mentally, emotionally, and just made me wake up to look at, oh my gosh, this is the rest of my life, and I need to be taking better care of this body and this mind.
I love that.
Yeah.
Transformative. The song that you turn to calm you or focus you.
I really enjoy music, but it's not music. You know, I know for you, you love to play, you love to sing, you love to listen. That's not really where I get my, I don't know, whatever you said, the calmness, whatever. To me, it's finding a really good audiobook. And I will just turn on one of my favorite audiobooks. And, you know, I'm dating myself and people are going to groan, but I am a huge fan of the Twilight books. I have been since they first came out. Okay. And I have them all on audiobook, and it's just such a comfort to me because I've listened to them so many times that I'll just turn on Twilight and listen to that for a while, and it just always brings a smile to my face.
Hey, whatever rocks your boat and makes you feel good, I love it. Your favorite movement or exercise?
I love to lift. I love to lift weights, especially doing lower body stuff like squats and deadlifts. And I always love to push myself and see how heavy I can lift. And it makes me feel strong. It makes me feel accomplished. And I love to sweat and feel like I've really taken my body to the limits.
Fountain of youth, right? Exercise is the true fountain of youth.
Exercise and movement is medicine.
That's right. A hidden talent that no one knows that you have.
Sorry, these aren't rapid fire. You're making me think. But nobody knows. I'm kind of an open book. I don't really keep, you know, I love to bake. I don't bake nearly as much anymore because then I have to eat what I bake, and I try and not eat all of that anymore. But I love to bake anything, cookies, cakes, cupcakes, pies, whatever that used to be. And to like decorate sugar cookies. That I love doing that when I had my business. And that, you want to talk about Zen? I just sit with a plate of sugar cookies and decorating them. That just takes me away.
Christmas is right around the corner. You can send your boy some cookies with decorations.
All right, I will.
All right. How about the best advice you ever received?
So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about when I was in chiropractic care or chiropractic practice and getting frustrated by people who don't care about their own health. And I had a mentor tell me that, it was his motto, and I took it with me. And he said, I care, but I won't carry. It's like, I can't care more about your health and your well-being than you do. So I care about you, but I'm not going to carry that burden for you. You need to care about your own health.
Care.
And I've taken that with me forever.
Yeah, I'm going to take that one too. I care, but I won't carry. You know, I had a SVP that when I was in corporate America, he used to always tell me, you can't give what you don't have. Ooh. And I love that. He was one of the reasons why I came up with Eagles Don't Quack. But you can't give what you don't have, and you care, but I won't carry.
And don't take advice from people who haven't been where you want to go.
Amen to that one. There's a lot of that going around these days, right?
It's
a lot of keyboard gangsters.
I call them keyboard warriors, but yeah.
Yeah. What would you tell your younger self?
Don't take life so seriously.
You used to take life really seriously?
I did, you know, and seeing my daughter grow up, like I said, I wanted to be a doctor my whole life. And when my daughter was thinking about what she wanted to do for a living, she felt like she didn't have it all together because, well, mom knew what she wanted to be, when she was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'm 19 years old and I have no idea what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of envy her in a way because she got to play around with a lot of different things and figure out what she wanted to do. And now she's in college studying engineering. She's finally found her path, but she went through so many different career choices along that path. And sometimes I wish that I had done more of that I had done more traveling and exploring and learning about different things instead of being so hyper focused on just, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do anything else.
Yeah, that was me.
Sometimes I missed out on some of it.
I did too. I felt like I was so hyper focused, and I don't know if I was trying to please others or what I was doing, but I was missing out and limiting my exposure to a lot of stuff. I started out at school. I was in aerospace engineering, and they weren't many people in that. And I double majored in pre-med because I wanted to be an ophthalmologist at one point. So I was like, hey, I'm smart enough. I'll do both. Stupid idea. You know what I mean? But I was just so driven. Like, I didn't have the luxury that my son has. He's like your daughter. He's double majoring and he's in biological agriculture engineering and agricultural business management.
Wow.
But he also wants to be a neurosurgeon. But he feels free. I see that freedom that he has in his choices versus me feeling like I have to do this. And that's the difference. And so, when you and we look back at that, we probably did limit ourselves because we were so hyper focused.
There are some careers that, people know early on what they want to do. Like, doctors, teachers, firefighters, people who are really in service oriented careers tend to figure that out really early in life, what they want to do. Most doctors that I know knew from an early age that was what they wanted to do, versus other careers where it takes a while to figure it out. And I don't know if we're born with just that innate need to serve others or not. But for most people who aren't like us, they get to play around with 1,000 different things before they figure out what they want to do.
Yeah. And I also grew up a PK kid. You know what I mean?
PK kid.
Preacher's kid. We call it a PK kid. So my dad would, he was a preacher, and then he would go around to rest homes and do rest home ministries and stuff. And I would follow behind him as a child playing the piano in the rest home. My whole life was just like, service driven because I saw my father and my parents very service driven. And so you made a very, very, very good point. So Melissa, we're winding down. Where can we find you? What's your handles?
So you can find me. My website is just melissagrosboll.com. It's very easy. And everything is on there. My social media stuff. It's just Melissa Grosboll everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And you can get access to my podcast from my website, or you can just search it out on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast platforms under the Many Faces of Cancer or under my name, Melissa Grosboll.
Any last words for us?
Just thank you so much for having me on. I said before we started, it's interesting being on the other side of the microphone and being interviewed. And this was so much fun. And I just had a great time chatting with you. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you for all the things that you're doing and for your support. And I'm blessed to call you a friend.
Absolutely.
Melissa Grosboll, everybody. Reinvention, healing, and strength after cancer. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tony.
God bless you.
Sure.
Bye-bye.